Deshangi Kompanutopsho. And now we're going to do the 4 limit contemplations, which are really, really important, that we should be doing these on a regular basis, because they really sum up everything that we need to do with our life. So may all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and from creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semchen tamche dewa tang dewe ju tang den pa ju jig Dungal tang, dungal chichu tang tra waju chik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindra waju chik, nering chak tang ni tang tra we tang num chempo la ne pa ju chik. So good evening to everybody. It's really nice to see all of you tonight. And Matthew, I'm happy to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time. Okay.
How's it now? So nice to see you again. Oh, when I saw this Chod Practice, I thought I can't miss this one.
Well, I wish you wouldn't miss anyone, Matthew, but never mind.
I'm coming back. I'll be back.
Good. I'm waiting patiently. Okay. So tonight, our topic is demons of depression, anxiety, and anger, applying the principles of the Chod practice. Now, I'll tell you why I chose to do this, because this idea was coming to me all the time that I must teach all my experiences with the Chod practice, because I've done the Chod practice for a very long time in my life. I'm not doing it so regularly now, but I did it over a number of years and on retreat for a long time. And I think there are really amazing principles. And I think what happens with a lot of people in the West is that Sultram Alioni, who most of you have actually read her book, and if you haven't read her book called Feeding Your Demons, then I really suggest you do get that and you do read it, because I really think it's a worthwhile book to actually read, which is kind of the Western way of looking at feeding your demon. But tonight, I really want to do the ancient way of looking at the demons. And then you can ask me all your questions. You can give me all the things you want to. And then next week, we can continue to actually do some of the practice as it's applied in the West, which I think is very important that we do. But I chose these three demons of depression, anxiety, and anger, because these are the 3 that I seem to be dealing the most with when I'm dealing with people. Those 3, and the most during COVID time, depression, anxiety, fears, anger and aggression. And these are the 3 that I seem to be dealing with over and over again. But in my mind, I had really wanted to actually explain the Chod practice even more than feed your demons, because in terms of the Western practice, because I think when you can understand when you can understand the actual Chod principle, then I think it is much easier to apply the Western thing. So I want to give you some of the real mystical things about the Chod practice and the things I've experienced. So tonight, we're going to start first with the story of Mahatma Gandhi, because I think that Sultan Alioni gives the story of Mahatma Gandhi. But before we do, I just want to give you a quote from Milarepa, who most of you know was Tibet's great yogi. And this is what he said: the malignant male and female demons who create myriad troubles and obstruction seem real before one has reached enlightenment. But when one realizes their true nature, they become protectors. And through their help and assistance, one attains numerous accomplishments. Now, this is such an interesting thing what he says, because we are changing our attitude towards these negative emotions and all the other demons that we're sitting with, all the other dark forces. And we want to change them so that they assist us. So it's really important that we understand them and we see what they are. So in brief, this story of Mahatma Gandhi, what happened was that he was told that he would be visited by a British official who would threaten him with prison if he didn't give up what the British considered to be the subversive activity of marching in protest of the British salt tax. And so Gandhi's advisors said, let's put nails in the road to puncture the tire of the official's car. And Gandhi said, you will do nothing of the sort. We shall invite the British official to tea. And so crestfallen, his followers obeyed. You know, tea with the British is a very important thing. So when the official arrived, he entered full of pomp and purpose. Now then, Mr. Gandhi, this so-called salt marching has to stop at once. Otherwise, I shall be forced to arrest you. Well, said Gandhi, let's first have some tea. Okay. The Englishman agreed reluctantly. Then, when he had drained his cup, shame he got ditched out, Eugene. When he had drained his cup, he said briskly, now we must get down to business, Mr. Gandhi, about these marches. Gandhi smiled. Not just yet, he said. Have some more tea and biscuits. There are many important things we need to talk about. And so it went. The Englishman became increasingly interested in what the Mahatma had to say, drank many more cups of tea and ate many more biscuits, and was completely diverted from his official task, and eventually went away, won over to Gandhi's cause. Gandhi used the medium of tea, an English ritual that applies civility and mutual respect, and literally fed this enemy until he became an ally. His tactic of feeding rather than fighting contributed to one of the most extraordinary non-violent revolutions in history. Now, Machik Lobtron, who was the founder of the Chod Practice, she got it from her guru, who was called Padampa Sangji. And I had such a funny experience with him when I was on retreat, but I'll tell you about that a bit later. But Machik Lobtron, and it's really funny because I was telling them yesterday morning that Natalie in Taiwan wanted to send a tanker to us, a tanker painting. So she asked me what she should do it on, and I said, do it on Machik Lobtron. She was giving it to this monastery in Taiwan who really do the most beautiful paintings. So she had this painting done, and then she said to me, it's going to cost quite a lot to send and all kinds of things. And I said, never mind, send it and I'll pay. Anyway, it came the day before yesterday, and there was no payment to pay for it. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, it's the most exquisite tanker. I wish I could show it to you, because tonight it would really be appropriate to show you this tanker painting, because it gives Machik Lobtron in her absolute beauty and everything, and how she did this Chod practice of feeding the demons. And then above, it's got Padampa Sangje on the picture. Anyway, I was going to put it, Lama Yeshe Rinpoche said to me, put it in your shrine room for the time being until you all go back to the center. And maybe we'll put it in Randburg, or we'll put it in the new temple. Anyway, it's so big, I really haven't got a place for it in here. So I'm going to take it to Lama Yeshe this week and show it to him and see whether he wants to put it in the new temple or whether I should try and make a place and just keep it here. But it's an exquisite painting. But the same tactic that was used by Gandhi was used by Machik all those years later, okay? This was in the 11th century. And Tibetan yogini, Machik Lobtron, she's been bumped out a dozen times, Eugene, she was receiving an initiation from that particular teacher at that time. It wasn't her guru, Padampa Sangye. His name was Sonam Lama, with several of her spiritual sisters. And at a key moment in the initiation, she suddenly rose up into the air. She actually levitated into the air, and then she was suspended in the air, and there she danced and spoke Sanskrit, but in a state of profound meditation. She was in this very extreme state of meditation, okay? She actually went through the wall, the clay walls of the temple, unimpeded, and she flew into a tree above the small pond next to the monastery. And the pond was the residence of a very powerful Naga being. Now, the Nagas, the Tibetans really work with the Nagas. We unfortunately don't work with any of the beings except what we see on this level. But the Tibetans work a lot with them. So in this pond was a very powerful Naga or water spirit. And they are capricious mythical beings believed to cause disruption and disease when they are disturbed. So if you try and build and disturb them or change anything in their lives, they can really, you can find amazing obstacles and you wouldn't even know that the Nagas had actually caused it, okay? This particular Naga was so terrifying that the local people did not even dare to look at the pond, never mind approach it. But Machik landed in the tree above the pond and stayed there in a state of meditation. The water spirit considered young Machik's arrival to be a direct confrontation, and he approached her threateningly, but she remained in meditation, absolutely unafraid. Okay, this infuriated him. So he gathered a huge army of Nagas from the region in an attempt to overwhelm her. When she saw the mass of terrifying magical apparitions coming, she immediately, in her mind, transformed her whole body into absolutely beautiful nectar, into a food offering. And what she did was, in her mind, she took her body and she actually offered it to the Naga to drink. And the Naga was so pleased with this offering that he promised not to harm her. Not only did he promise not to harm her, he promised to protect her, and he pledged to serve her or anyone following her teachings. By meeting the demons and offering her body as food with them with unshakable compassion, rather than fighting against them, she turned them into allies. Now, a lot of you might say, so how are we going to turn people into allies? But that's why I started with the story of Gandhi, because it's really important that you understand this Chod principle, which is that you are able in an amazing way to actually feed these demons and change them into your allies. But most of us are really, really, really not aware of how often we face these demons and how they debilitate our lives and how we need to do this feeding, okay? So demons inside us, okay, are not some evil spirit waiting for us in a dark place. They are just within us. They are the forces we keep fighting inside ourselves. They are our inner enemies that undermine our best intentions. And what we learn from this practice is to stop fighting the depression, stop fighting with the anger, stop fighting with your anxiety and your fears, and let them come up so that you can really see how they trip you up all the time. So what I want to say is, only then can we find a path to inner peace and liberation. Only then can they be liberated into the energy that assists us in life and becomes allies. Now, when we look at people who've suffered from depression for many, many, many years, okay, and I come across them all the time, and the first thing they tell me is always that they are depressed and that they suffer from depression, and maybe that their mother suffered from depression and their family suffered from depression. And often I hear them saying, I'm trying so hard to fight this depression, but it gets so bad, I have to take medication. I'm not saying people must never take medication, but I have to take medication and keep it from destroying me, because we have a history of depression in our family. So it's like a fait accompli. There's little I can do except to get somebody to take it away by some medication. But the bottom line is, you have not got to the cause of it. You have not got to see what that anxiety is all about. So even if you were to manage, and I know very few people who do manage to get rid of depression purely by medication, if it was just a physical thing, then it would be a lot easier to get rid of it with medication. But even if you get rid of it with medication, it does not show you the momentum. And never do I hear people saying something like, and this is what I'm trying to teach people to say, I want to get to know my depression. I want to befriend it. I want to nurture it. I want to work with it. I want to use it, to utilize it. I may even discover there's nothing very substantial about it. It's just an imprint that I've carried for many, many lifetimes. And nobody says it all began when I looked at my life with a negative mindset. And nobody says I always seem to look at life through a negative mindset. So in that beautiful story where the teacher takes a white sheet of paper with a black dot on it, and she shows it up on the board to the children, and she says, what do you see? Lots of children in the class say, I see the black dot. And she goes, why do you only see the black dot if there's a huge white sheet of paper? Okay, and you look at the black dot. And some of us have been looking at a black dot for many, many, many eons of time. And it's time to take our focus off the black dot as well. And eventually, the imprint gets so deep that that person is catapulted into a family where depression looms largely, or where the circumstances of the family cause you to actually feel depressed. You are catapulted into that, okay? And if people could only say, I must look at it. I must make friends with my own creation, my own self-created demon. I must confront its truth. If people could say that, it would be we'd have a completely different story to everything. As Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche says, sentient beings, that's us, are possessed by the spirit of ignorance and the 84,000 disturbing emotions. And he says they've undergone so much pain and misery for so long, for eons upon eons, But he says, but it's a self-created possession. The moment you know that you have an awakened nature, the moment you see that you have a Buddha nature, okay, the possession vanishes. And it's called the collapse of confusion. And that's what we're trying to do, collapse the confusion. It's really important to understand. So the word Chod, it's C-H-O-D with two little dots if you want to write it, okay? The word Chod means cutting through the misconception of the self that is the root of samsara. We're cutting through that misconception because people think they've got an I, a me. Everything revolves around I and me. And the Karmapa says the true source of fear is this, the clinging to self, to identity. He says, because I see self as something separate, something whole, something that is solid and independent, therefore, I fear losing that independent self. I fear being sick. I fear something bad happening to me in inverted commas. And he says this is the source of all our true fear. So I'm going to give you a little bit of teaching on the Chod. And then I want to open it up for questions, and then we'll do a meditation and look at some of your demons. But I don't want to do the Western work tonight. I'll do the Western work next time because I must take 2 sessions over this. And I don't want to, I think a lot of people that do feeding your demons don't understand the real Chod principles. And I want to share those with you from my own experience of what happened to me over a very long period of doing the Chod, especially in India on long retreat. You know, that Chod at night, I mean, at night, late at night, you actually find all the drums and all the bells and all the everything. You hear it all over and people are doing it. And you know that everybody's feeding their demons. Everybody is transforming, making friends with them and transforming their bodies and making the demons your ally. So at night, when I used to come to do it, the later you do it at night, the better. You're supposed to do it in a cemetery or a charnel ground, okay? Or somewhere where it's really scary. The idea being that if you really evoke that fear and able to see through it, it's an amazing thing. Because, of course, depression also hides the fears and all that. And anger hides the depression usually. So I'll give you a chance to ask in a minute. I'm just going to give you a little background. The philosophical basis for the Chod practice is the Prajna Paramita Sutra. Okay, now that Prajna Paramita Sutra is the sutra of that wisdom that goes beyond, that absolute wisdom that goes beyond. And it focuses on attaining, first of all, bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is when you have that beautiful awakened heart that really wants to help all sentient beings. When that heart of bodhicitta is awakened in you, that's the beginning of turning from the I to turning to be interested in all sentient beings and what happens to them, okay? And it's also, the Prajna Paramita is also about realizing emptiness. And when you look at that, okay, what's very, very interesting about the emptiness is that we can't, when you look at Asian monks, okay, when you look at Asian monks and when you go on retreat, you have a lot of contact with Asian monks, and mostly they're Tibetan. And when we meet, especially on retreat, or even the masters I have contact with, is that the negative emotions are never clung to. They never clung to. They never attached to. Whereas with us in the West, okay, we're like a dog holding on to a bone all the time. We can't clutch and attach to our negative emotions. And what I've always found with all of them is they never fixate. They never take anger or fear or depression or anything and fixate on it. They look at it once and it's never mentioned again. And I keep on thinking to myself, why do we have such a neurotic fixation about all our negative emotions? And we go back and we pick it up again and we pick it up again and we cling to it again and we pick it up again. We always go back to looking at it. We bring it up again and again and again. We talk about it until the hind leg off the donkey. And what happens after the Chod practice is you keep dissolving this negativity. And we'll talk how you actually do that dissolving of the negativity. Okay. But Machik Labtron was immersed in this Prajnaparamita Sutra. And a lot of you know the sutra. It goes, emptiness is form and form is emptiness. So we know that from the essence comes the form, and from the form, it dissolves back into the emptiness. Nothing is independent. Everything is dependent on something else. And so Machik was a male yogi in India. I mean, it's a fascinating story and really true. It's been actually, it's been confirmed. She was a male yogi in India. And at one given time of his life, the Dakinis came to him and they said, we're going to transfer your consciousness into a female in Tibet. You've got a lot of work to do there. And there was this incredible switch over. And they put his body to rest in a cave. And later, when Machik was doing her work, and of course, in that time in the 11th century in Tibet, they didn't believe in women in any way, okay? So when she told them about her practice, they didn't believe her and they didn't believe that the consciousness was transferred into a female body. They didn't believe anything about her. So she actually sent these scholars back to India to find the body. And there they found this body, which was absolutely not dead. It was just put in a form that you couldn't touch it, you know, you couldn't do anything to it, but it was going to get the consciousness back into it at some given point, okay? So Machik at that time was a professional reader, and she would go into families and read the Prajnaparamita Sutra, which was all about emptiness. It was about feelings are emptiness, form is emptiness, sensations are emptiness, everything. Your body is empty. What does emptiness actually mean? It means it doesn't have a separate existence. It means that it's only there in relation to all the causes and conditions that made it happen. It doesn't exist in itself. Me, only exists in relation to absolutely all the conditions. If my mother wouldn't have birthed me, I wouldn't be here. If I hadn't done this and this and this I would be in a different state. It's dependent. And so because it's dependent and doesn't have a separate existence, we can't see it as solid at any particular time, okay? And Machik was known as the Great Mother, and she was also known as an emanation of Yeshe Tsogyal, who was Guru Rinpoche's consort. Now, Padampa Sangye was her guru, and he was called the master of the pacification of suffering. Now, this is such an important state, because the pacification of suffering, the pacification of your depression, the pacification of your angry moods, the pacification of your fears is so, so important, because pacification is one of the enlightened activities. Now, all of you know that if you've got a baby that is crying, you cannot feed that baby anything because the baby's screaming. So what a mother does is she either gives it a pacifier, a dummy, or she picks up that baby and nurtures it and sings to it until it settles down, and then she can do whatever she wants. Now, how did we ever think that our fears, that our angers, that our depressions could get better without us pacifying? Think about that depression. That depression is trying to say to you, hey, I'm your depression, and this is what I'm telling you. And you're just saying, I don't want you. Go away. Get lost. I don't want to see you. Go away. Go away. Go away. You're fighting with it all the time. Why not welcome it? Maybe it's telling you something. Maybe it's something you've carried for many lifetimes. Maybe it's saying to you, you haven't really seen me. You haven't understood. You can't be happy, because every time you do something, it creates a little bit of happiness, and then you're unhappy again. So maybe you need to look very deeply at me and see what I'm telling you and see who I am. And you need to start with the enlightened activity of pacification, pacifying. Anybody give me ideas how you could pacify? Anybody give me ideas of how you could pacify? How would you pacify a child that was very angry? How would you pacify another person that was so depressed?
Mal, can I just say, so I've been working a lot with Dakota at the moment on identifying feelings.
Okay.
So I just immediately, when you were talking, I was thinking about that, and how, with her, we're trying to teach her, instead of just throwing a temper tantrum, what are you feeling? And once she explains what she's feeling, okay, this is how you can cope with that emotion that you're feeling. So I think the key thing is to actually identify how you're feeling before you try and sort of suppress it or deal with it.
Absolutely. And what you're saying is so important, because you can't pacify what you don't know that exists or what you haven't gotten to know yet. You can only pacify what you know and what you discover and how it is for you. And I agree with that totally, okay? Because there are actually five enlightened activities, which I've taught you before, but just looking at them, it's very, very interesting, because they are pacifying, magnetizing, which is magnetizing people into what you're teaching them, increasing, which is really increasing the positivity and what you can give them in enlightenment, and subjugating. That's actually really subjugating what that darkness is once you really know, and placing something else in its place. And then the fifth one is action accomplishment, which is actually getting the job done, allowing it to happen through you naturally. So what they said about Matchik was that Padampa Sangye was actually an emanation of Padmasambhava, of Guru Rinpoche, which is very interesting. And he taught her the pacification of suffering. And from that, she developed this Chod practice. And her realization of the voidness of a self, she didn't think, I'm a person, I want this, I need this, I'm this is my identity. She knew that her identity was very vast, which a lot of us have really, really, really forgotten about and don't understand in any way. And so if we are void of a self, if the self is not something solid, then there's no reason to be egocentric, and there's no reason to defend it or to believe in the solidity of our negative emotions because me, doesn't like it. So with the Chod practice, what happens is, and it's a beautiful practice with many melodies and many, you take refuge, you do bodhicitta, you do all of the things, and then you do these amazing, amazing songs. And it's supposed to be sung. In the old days, they went into the charnel grounds or into the cemeteries where it was really scary. They would go in, and they would go in with their drum and their bells. Okay, I'll just show you what that's like for those of you that have never seen it. So you have to use, when you do the Chod practice, a drum like this. And the drum is actually, it's actually a very interesting thing. It's got lots of symbolism, but I won't go into that now. But the drum's got it's got two parts to it, and you hold it in your right hand. It's got these two things, and then you do it like that. Okay, that's how you do the drum. And while you're doing the drum, you use the bell as well. So it's a lot of coordinating because you're singing a song, you're doing the drum and the bell, and then you have to actually use the trumpet as well. It took me ages to be able to get this together. So it's quite a complex practice. It has got a lot of stuff to do while you are actually doing the practice. And it took me ages and ages to master it. And I'll tell you about that because I didn't have a direct teacher when I did it. I had a few teachers, but then I had to work it out by myself. So it's got these amazing melodies, which you're supposed to learn off by heart and then go into a cemetery or charnel ground, which we couldn't do, in our culture. Can you imagine if you went and sat in a cemetery with your bells and your drums and everything, and tried to do it? And the thigh bone trumpet, I'd never played it. I used to use it on the tape, okay? But it's got a really eerie sound. It goes, ooh, ooh. It's supposed to invoke everything in you, which is really, really important. It's really quite a deep sound. And so the first time I did it at home, I'd done it on retreat and everything. The first time I did it at home, my neighbor said to me the next day, I heard this peculiar noise, coming from what were you doing something? So I knew that I'm going to have to play it very, very softly if I ever do it at home. And I do it at home, but I do it quite softly. I've mastered the art of doing it softly. But it's really, really important because what happens in this practice, and then when you do the Western practice, you can make it a little bit easier for yourself. But I want you to get the mystical feeling of this practice is that you actually offer your body to the demons as a compassionate act. So like I used to put all the demons in South Africa, and we've got plenty of them, and offer my body, say, don't pinch anymore. Here's my body. I'm offering you the nectar of my body, which was quite important, but also for your own demons. But first, the practitioner has got to, in song and everything else, visualize your consciousness leaving the top of your body in what we call the power practice. And that power practice is that you allow your consciousness from your heart to leave your body out of the top. And then I used to do this practice late at night, and I used to sit after that power practice. I'm sitting over there, and then you project yourself as Vajrayogini. Eugene, if you can give us that picture of Vajrayogini, it'll really be good, which you had. Stephanie. Eugene, is it possible for you to put it on just so that we could get an idea of it?
Yeah, I lost connectivity and reconnected, so you just need to make me a co-host again.
I just want you to see this, everybody, so you can actually, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
I just want you to see, hello, Steph, a picture of Vajrayogini in this practice, so you get a good idea. Okay, now this is Vajrayogini, and she's a very important part of the practice. And when I started on my spiritual journey, I had a dream with her, a very profound dream, which started me on my pathway. But if you notice her, she's naked, she's red, she's got the bell and the drums in most of the pictures. She may not have it in this picture, okay? She's usually got that. And if you look at what she's standing on, there are bodies underneath her feet, okay? So the bodies underneath her feet are her keeping control of all the negativity. She's got them all under her feet. And she's got 3 eyes, and she's looking into the sky. And she is the Dakini of all the Dakinis, the Vajrayogini. And so whatever you do in the practice, you always imagine yourself as Vajrayogini. And when you do your dream yoga practice, you also imagine yourself as Vajrayogini so that you can actually do the practice. Thank you, Eugene. So while you have transferred your consciousness out, you have emanated Vajrayogini, and she takes a hooked knife, okay, and she takes the body, because now you've left your body. She chops off the head, she takes the skull, she puts it on a fire, and then she chops up the body. And you're visualizing this while you're sitting in the other dimension. You're visualizing all of this. And then she puts it into a pot, and she makes this beautiful, the pot expands of the skull, and she makes this beautiful nectar. Okay, and then she feeds every single person that is unhappy, every single demon of yours, every situation. Like if you've got a difficult boss and he's awful, you can imagine feeding him with that beautiful nectar. Whatever you've got that is really difficult, you are feeding. All the beings that are negative in the world, you are actually feeding. And it's really, really important that you actually see, because Kabje Zong Rinpoche, in his book on the oral instructions of the Chö, said the purpose of doing Chö at night and in fearful places is to develop understanding of emptiness and to develop bodhicitta, which is that beautiful heart. He said the fear is for the I, the me, and that causes the desperate search for an I to hold onto. He says we have to discover the non-existence of an independent I. There is no such a thing as an independent I. Then we can realize emptiness, not something that is only come about because of the causes and conditions. And he said, the antidote to fear is bodhicitta motivation, which comes in 2 parts. 2 motivations. 1, you get disillusioned with samsara, and that's how I feel, totally disillusioned with the way the world is at the moment. I feel totally disillusioned in this age of degeneration. And secondly, really wanting from your heart enlightenment to benefit all beings, really wanting that enlightenment to benefit all beings. So that just gives you a little bit of background of the Chö. We will go on to the Western way of doing it next time, but I wanted to really give you this, and I want to give you some of my experiences, but we'll meditate. But let me open it first. And maybe you want to ask me something, maybe you want to comment, whatever. Just ask or comment whatever you want right now, because there are a couple of people I don't know, Z and Danielle. So ask your questions, please. Anybody, just put your hand up and unmute yourself and then ask your questions. You accept everything I'm saying?
Mel, I have a sort of a question, sort of an observation. It strikes me that in order to start and to begin to, if I can say, undertake the practice, you need to stop and be silent and ask questions rather than fight something. It seems that you need to pause, before you can and think before you engage with the demons.
100%. You are
Yeah.
100% right. Because none of you can do that. You've got to have an empowerment to do the Chod practice. Okay, you can't do it without empowerment. I mean, you could do Chod without empowerment. You could do Tara without empowerment. You can't do the Chod.
Okay.
Because there'll just be a backlash on you. And I'm not trying to get you to do the Chod. I'm merely wanting to give you the atmosphere of the Chod.
Understanding, yeah.
So that you really understand. And I think what you've picked up is excellent. Because how many times do people just not look deeply at what at what those demons are inside you? How many people just don't look? They know they're depressed, but they don't want to look. They know they feel awful about everything in life, or angry with every second person in life, or fearful and they're anxious about everything they've got to do, but they don't want to look. So I think your idea of asking the questions is absolutely essential, well thought out, and we're going to do that. Any other questions or comments?
Mel,
Yes.
just picking up on what Kaylee said earlier, and I think Diana now touched on it. I've read the book, and I struggled with it. I mean, doing it on my own, and I just don't have experience or anything, or too much depth of knowledge to get anywhere. But I think what you brought up now really sort of drove the point home of it's not about fighting anymore. It's about accepting, and it's about acknowledging what's there. I think that's quite a key place to start, which makes a lot of sense to me. And obviously the pause and the sort of personal inner awareness of what's actually going on, without being too analytical, without having to solve or figure out these causes and effects. I think that can be a bit self-defeating. And without preempting, you'll probably get into this with the next session. But the way that the book is written is very, it's that combination of the Western and the Eastern sort of ways of doing things, and she lays it out in steps. And I think for me, maybe you can shed some light on this. But for me, sort of like a step-by-step process, procedural, it's very appealing. It makes sense to me, obviously being, this sort of Western sort of mindset. But I think, like the foundation and that openness needs to be there. So I sort of struggle when it came to the steps, but I think, maybe the intention needs to be there first, where I was sort of going into it thinking, I want to be happier, I want to be better. And that's maybe not right. Maybe it's more about
the ego. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's ego-centered. And that's why it doesn't work, because it's not about, so many people make such a mistake because they think they're going to be happy. But in the end, it's not the external things that make you happy. And I love what you say. So you struggled to do the steps. I'll teach those steps, but tonight I really felt to myself a lot of the reasons why people can't do her 5-step practice is because they don't understand that motivation of the heart. You know, people just don't understand in the West. People don't understand that you can actually love other people and give more to other people than even to yourself. You know, we brought up so narrow-minded, so absolutely, you know, my needs must be met, I must be met. And, you know, it's a wonderful thing. When I used to do that Chod practice, it was the last thing I did before I went to bed for all those months in India. And when I finished, it was like the storm was over. It was like, you know, now I've fed everything. Now I'm ready to go into my sleep state. Now I'm actually, I really feel I used to take each person, I used to take each child of mine and what their demons were. My husband doesn't even know. I would take his demons, you know, and feed them when I was doing the practice, and my own, of course. But by the end of the practice, and when you heard it in all the retreat rooms, you heard the drums and the bells and those thigh-bone trumpets going, oh, oh, you could hear it all over the retreat center. It was absolutely, you know, it was absolutely like, it was a big thing. And I want to tell you how I got to do the practice, because that was part of it. But I think that when you understand it, we can't understand in the West that you dissolve your body and you feed it to people. But what is really important here is that you begin to realize that this is not about the I, that the I, that I, not this I, that the I or the me is just a teeny little part of something that's going through this life. So you don't have to spend your whole life fixing it up and doing, you know, and getting it defended and defending yourself to so many people in the world. So I think it's really important to understand the beautiful mysticism of the whole Chod practice. And perhaps you didn't really have that, Matthew. So it's wonderful that you're here tonight, because then you can begin to understand, and I want to share my experiences. So I like that. Anyone else want to say anything? No? Avril, I'm sure you've got a lot to say on this subject. No? Anyone? Speak, ask, tell me. Then I can go on. I don't want to go on when you don't really understand or you can't get it. Okay, if everybody's happy, then let's do a little meditation. Okay, and then at the end of the meditation, all I want you to do, not in the beginning, I want you to just identify your biggest demon. Okay, if your biggest demon is one of the three that I've chosen, depression, anxiety, or anger, then that's fine. But if you've got another demon, like you keep on procrastinating, or you sabotage everything you're trying to do, or your whole life is led, or you have a particular chronic illness, because a chronic illness is actually a demon in your body. And the chronic illness comes from the way you think and then eventually goes into the body. So it's also quite important, because with the Chod practice, it also used to feed any illness that you had, which was absolutely amazing. It feeds the illness and placates it, pacifies it and everything. So very often when I wasn't feeling well, I would just use that Chod practice to feed it. So I want you to look at what your biggest demon is, what the demon is that you most need to work on. I mean, I think Tsultrim Elioni describes it sometimes like those Russian dolls. You know, those dolls that fit into each other. You might have about 5 demons that all fit into each other. This one comes from this one. But just for our purposes, I want you to think about which one trips you up the most. Okay? Is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it always that you're planning everything and is your demon a control freak that really has to have everything the way you need it in order for you to not feel anxious? Okay, all these things. So first we're going to do a little shamatha meditation. So just breathe in and breathe out. Come to this moment in time. The past is gone. The future hasn't been made. And this is the moment where we collect ourselves and bring it all into the central channel, where there's no good and bad, no black and white. Just everything is. In the Prajnaparamita Sutra, it tells you that 4 feelings, perceptions, habits are all empty. That means, is there nothing there? No. It means what is there is just dependent on causes and conditions. And that if you change the causes and conditions, that particular thing can dissolve. So you're breathing in and out, allowing everything to come up, all your feelings, all your thoughts, just not going after them, allowing them to be and bringing your mind back to the breath. In and out. Just gently bring up which demon is your one that keeps tripping you up. Are you fearful and disguise it? Do you get angry very quickly? Do you often have a negative attitude and feel depressed about life? Do you hide from all these things in your life? Do you need reinforcement all the time from people? Do you absolutely insist on controlling your life in every way, planning, plotting? Then there's an anxiety demon deep inside you. I just want you to look But which is the demon that gets you? It might even be an addiction. We're not going to really go into that now, but an addiction also comes from those three, from anger, from fear, from anxiety, from depression, to run away from it. Just get in touch with which demon you'd really like to work with. Maybe you might even just be very impatient. Okay, so I actually got, just let me define one thing for you, that it is a deep practice with beautiful melodies. It should be practiced in scary places, always at night. And the cutting is to sever the habitual tendencies of self-cherishing, ego, clinging, and attachment. It's really important. You know, if we look in Buddhist history, it's very interesting to see that like many of these great masters had incarnations where they used maybe not that practice, but for example, there's always the story of the Buddha who came across a very hungry tiger who could not feed her babies because she was really starving. And he actually cut his body and gave it to her. Now that symbolized the Chod practice. He fed his whole body literally to her in that incarnation, and then was reborn in a much higher state, even higher state after that, from his complete compassion of seeing this hungry tiger. He actually fed his body to her. Now I got my empowerment from the Karmapa. I'm sorry Martin isn't here. He went, and a few people, Karen, a couple of people went when we went to India to get this empowerment. Did you go, Mimi? You didn't go that time.
I was there, Mel.
Oh, you went, Kathy. Okay.
It was my first trip, and Nola helped me pay for it.
Okay.
I'll never forget it with the Karmapa.
Yeah, the Karmapa was right there. Sorry?
Yes.
We practiced it, but we didn't ever get the empowerment.
Yes.
We did the practice.
Oh, you went when we went to India that time with that master. But you can never do the practice without an empowerment. It's too challenging and everything. You can never do it without an empowerment. And I don't know how we'd ever get an empowerment now. The Karmapa was even reluctant to give that empowerment. Do you remember, Kath?
Yes.
I remember you being there. But anyway, it was over a few days. And that woman, Tsultrim Alioni, was the one who organized the whole empowerment. So she was actually there. She has this Tara Mandala where she actually has done the practice, taught many, many Westerners how to do the practice and everything. But she started with the ancient Chod practice. And so the whole thing over those couple of days was very auspicious. The Karmapa taught the whole history of the Chod practice. And then I don't know if it was that trip or the trip after, maybe when you were there, Mimi, but this guy taught us a lot of the practice. He demonstrated it at Cherubling. But if you could do the practice from that demonstration, no way. Okay, I mean, he did it quickly and he sang the songs and he showed us how to use the thing. You could never do it. And what I did before I went for a long time to India was, I was in London. So I went to Lama Zangmo and I said to her, please, won't you help me? I need to do the Chod practice when I go to India. So she said, Melanie, I don't help people with the practices. I've got a lot of people that do it, but okay, because it's you, I'll help you. So she also went through it quite quickly and quite briefly and all of that kind of thing. She did give me a tape that I could take, but I still couldn't do it properly when I went to India. But I was absolutely determined that I was going to do it, okay? And there were a few retreatants occasionally that you could talk to. There was one Israeli girl next to me who felt sorry for me because I was trying to master the practice. And she gave me a few tips, but what she did say to me was, she said, just try it and try it and try it and try it, and you'll get it. And that's exactly what happened. In the beginning, I couldn't manage with the drums and the bells and the tunes and the everything. I just couldn't manage the practice. But it became so easy after a while. And it became so beautiful when you heard all the noises at night and everybody doing it. And when I was kicked out of the monastery because of the permits and went to the Karmapas monastery, I used to do it there in the night. But in the morning, when I came down to eat breakfast in the little restaurant of his monastery, they were all whispering when I came into the morning breakfast. And I thought, they're whispering about me. You could tell if people are whispering about you. And then one of the guys spoke English and he came up to me and he said, do you do the Chod practice? So I said, why are you asking? He said, no, we all talking. We heard it in the monastery last night and we want to know if it's you. So I said, yes, actually it is me doing it. And then after that, they had such respect for me. I can't begin to tell you. Don't ask me why, but it was kind of, you're a Western girl and you're doing the practice. So all of them were suddenly my friends and wanted to wait on me and wanted to do things with me. So what I'm saying is that even in Tibet and in those places, it's regarded as a practice that you do when you are really ready to have that bodhicitta in your heart. It's really, really important. And I used to dream profoundly after doing the practice. And I found that after I'd finished the practice, every bit of negativity dissolved. It just wasn't there. I wasn't afraid. I mean, when I came into that room and there was this iguana thing on the top of the cupboard that I was so afraid of, and then there was scorpions that I was so afraid of. But when I had done the practice, there was no more fear. It was as though everything that I did, it was like there was a storm and now the storm was over. And I used to go into the little kitchen and make a cup of tea and then sit on my bed and everything was calm within me and everything was completed. It never was quite like that when I did it at home, but it made a huge difference to my angers, to my attachments to things. I can't explain it to you except to say that suddenly whatever anybody did to me wasn't a big deal anymore. It felt okay. I felt like I was brave and everything was quiet and everything was pacified, and then I could go on with my life. And that's what I think this whole feeding of the demons does. People don't have the patience to do it. You can't do the Chod practice itself. It's a long practice with a lot of effort in it, but you can do the practice mentally, which is really important. And I think that when Tulku Urgyen says this in one of his practices that he gives, he goes, Hug, duality demons of ignorant confusion, do not remain here go elsewhere. The wrathful wisdom king of natural awareness will crush you into the realm of non-thought. Now, I love that. I say that every day. In other words, if you take that awareness and you shine it on, that feeling that keeps tripping you up, that feeling that's got a momentum, and you can tell that momentum. You can tell it in a very young child. You can tell it in a baby. You can tell from a baby when they're going to be a control freak, when they're going to have angers, and definitely in a little child, because these children have these feelings about them that when you look at it, you know that it didn't come from any of the circumstances in this life. Yes, no, do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, Ross? Ross, ask your questions. You had a whole lot. Just unmute yourself.
So, just as a bit of background, I live on a game reserve, so we live in an agricultural area, and the violence here is, or has been in the last 3 months, quite serious. And we're getting one armed break-in every week on the game reserve that I live in. And the question I had was, in the small hours of the morning, I think the anxiety, which is sort of sitting in the background, and it's not an overt thing because I kind of don't feel exposed, but it is obviously there because it's starting to cloud my kind of thinking about other things.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So when you have that kind of anxiety, so it's like, in a way, with all these burglaries and all these break-ins, you actually are in a charnel ground. You know, you actually are in a scary place. And I think a lot of people that live out in the country and everything now are really, really scared. I think that there have been so many break-ins, and your friend had a terrible break-in in which she and her son were tied up. And I think it really is a very real thing. And how do you deal with it? Could you actually just say, wow, I'm lucky. I've actually been put here, and I need to use the resource of my own self to get through this. So next week we will really do the practice, throwing the light of awareness. But is it possible to say, maybe I'm in this environment because we're all in an environment that we need to be in. There's no doubt. We're in a family that we need to be in. We go through the trauma that we need to go through. You know, we just go through so much in our lives. And everything is part of what we have to learn, what we have to confront. Because if we just think of it, that imprint that comes with us for a long time comes from back and back and back. I mean, when I look at myself in India, there's absolutely, here in my house, I'll call my husband, oh, there's a big spider in the kitchen, or oh, there's this in this, you know, or there's a rat and I can't go in that area of the house, or whatever the case is, you know, whatever there is. And basically, we're in the right place. And when I really sit down and think about it, I think, what needs to be done with it? Why are we in this place? Why is there all these temptations? Why are there things that we have to confront? I mean, yesterday I was reading you that story of the master in Guru Rinpoche's Terma, who was thrown into a pit of snakes and all of that, a whole lot of reptiles, and he came out shining bright. And when they were really sorry, because he was a master, he said, don't be sorry. because in my last life, or one of my previous lives, I was a mongoose. And I ate up all those snakes and all those reptiles when I was a mongoose. So now you threw me into the pit, and that put paid to that karma. So it's such an interesting thing. I mean, why would you have a love for animals and be out in the country where it's quite dangerous? Well, what is it? What is the imprint that is coming up? And can you take that? Like I said to you, use Guru Rinpoche's clearing of the obstacles. When I've got to go on hair-raising adventures and things like that, especially in India and lots of other parts of the world, I really use that clearing of the obstacles, and I believe in it. And I believe, and also when you really think about it, none of these masters are afraid about their lives. I mean, Jamkon Control, he was this wonderful master, and he lived at Sherabling, Palpung Sherabling. He's got his place sort of above the monastery there. And there was one time when Tai Situ was going to go in this particular car on this particular mission. And Jamkon Control, who was a very, very wise master, said, "You're not going. I'm going on it." And Tai Situ said, I have to go. And he said, "No, you're not going. I'm going on it." And he went in the car that Tai Situ was supposed to have been, and there was a bomb, and he was killed. Okay. And it's just the most unbelievable story, because he went and sacrificed himself. He did not want the master to go in that car. And he came back straight away. And then when I saw him there, he was a child. He just came straight back. They don't have an attachment to their bodies or whatever the case is. He just came straight back. And so did Dajjam Lingpa. Dajjam Lingpa also came straight back. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Do you know that he's got about 4 emanations that are all alive now? So they don't see themselves in that restricted way. So when we're in a situation that is quite anxiety provoking, or that is quite anger provoking, or that is quite depressing for us, isn't that in a way an amazing opportunity to say to yourself, this is the chance, the opportunity, open portal to unity for me to confront that demon of anxiety, which might have lain dormant for a few lifetimes. Anyone want to say? Ross, do you want to say? So basically, you and I have got to give you practices so that you fill the space of your house, so that there is really light in your house, so that you give your animals confidence, so that you are no longer afraid for your life. And if you can overcome that demon by actually seeing what it is, what is it next week I want you to do? What is it that scares me? You're all scaring me. Nobody's saying a word.
I think, and this is probably a totally egotistical statement, but one of the things I've done, which I think is a practical thing, which is these crime, the waves of crime come literally in waves, and then they'll find it gets too hot on this place because the security guys will kind of chase them off, and then they'll go elsewhere, off towards Harderbergsport. And what I thought was, I'll just come in every night at 6. I'll be inside, curtains closed, lights on, doggies home, because to sit out is just making yourself a target, as it were, which seems to be illogical or lacking in wisdom.
Why would you sit out? Who would sit out in a situation like that?
Because all the animals are here. I mean, you can hear the jackals, and you can often see giraffes walking past your front door. And I mean, that's why people live in the bush, because it's so gorgeous.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you are forced to go indoors and everything because of the fear.
Yes. Well, as an adaptation, not forced. It's a choice.
Yeah. But the choice is when you're there, are you afraid? Still.
Once I'm inside, I think I'm fine. If I sat out in the garden, which my garden opens directly onto the bush, and yeah, I think I'd feel pretty anxious.
Phew, it's a time of our age. Now you've got to look at, I want you to make friends with that anxiety demon. I want you to ask, well, what are you teaching me? What is it that you're giving me? What is it that I need to learn? Because you're there for a reason. Maybe you're there to protect the animal life, and maybe that's your bodhicitta motivation, to protect the animal life as much as you can. And maybe if you start putting out light and everything, and you put it right over all the properties that are out there, maybe you could change this. And also, like in your feeding, in your bodhicitta, actually think of the people that are breaking in and sit and think about them until your anger and your disgust for them turns into a compassion. Actually make yourself think how sad it is that people live with terror, you know. And like, this is what Matchik did when she actually stayed there with this Naga. She actually looked at him until such time as the bodhicitta, the compassion, rose from her heart, and she fed them. Now, I find myself doing this a lot when I'm really angry with members of the government that really make a mess and that pinch and that don't help the poor people and all of that kind of thing. I find myself angry. But if I sit and meditate and I look very carefully, something in my heart goes out to that background, that deprivation background, that then becomes a demon, forcing people to actually go and do things that they don't really want to do, but they almost feel they are doing it for the I, and so that I never have to be deprived of everything. You know, what is very sad is that the children, a lot of them who haven't known what the parents have, also do it. But if you look at it, it's got to be an ancient momentum of terrible anxiety. When I look back in my life of childhood during the apartheid era and everything, and what people had to suffer, I feel so ashamed. I even feel ashamed of myself. That how did we live through all of this? How did we go through it? And so maybe you should do a lot of feeding in the area. So maybe you can visualize these robbers coming and terrorizing people, and maybe you can actually sit with it until your heart starts thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so sad for them. I'm so sad that they are doing this, which is such a negative thing to do, you know, and then feed them. Actually ask Guru Rinpoche, say from your heart, you're actually feeding these demons and satisfying them. Imagine you were dissolving and you were feeding them with that nectar. I think you're there for a very important reason. And the fact that you're doing your practice out there is amazing. You might change the whole area there. Okay, don't be so shocked. No, but it's true. Because if you look at it, it's so interesting. Kaylee wrote that article of like, what percentage of the world are Buddhas, you know, are Buddhists and everything. And I just think of Tai Situ's thing of 3/4 of the planet at the moment is in darkness and 1/4 is in light. Now, hopefully we are the 1/4 that is in light, and hopefully we can take that light and spread it. And that's the purpose of all this demon work, to dissolve things, to make the world a much better and easier place to live in. You know? Can you
Mel?
all- Yes, please, Mim.
I think Dorji Semper practice also helps, because when
Yes.
that nectar comes through you and you
Yes.
dissolve all those demons and impurities, then it goes into the earth to feed whatever needs feeding and come back up pure. And that also gives a sense of relief. I find.
100%, 100%. All of the practices, clearing the obstacles with Guru Rinpoche, every one of the practices helps, because we of mortal Western humans don't have the ability to do everything that we need to do. So it's amazing. I mean, I think that we all placed in particular places to give the light. I always think of myself when I'm giving teaching here, I think of myself spreading that light, and then hopefully the people that are coming are spreading the light more. And so the light grows and grows and grows, and the demons are confronted, and they dissolved and they dissolved and they dissolved. So important, this. Gabi, you might want to say something, do you? No? Okay, she doesn't want to. Anybody else?
Mel,
Yes, go on, go.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to say that what you said to me in our last session is that these people, like I said to you, I drive through and I see all these people, some, don't have a leg and they're begging. And then, as I said to you, I just feel so sorry for them. But then you said something to me that made me think, you said to me that it's karma. And so
It is karma, yeah. But that doesn't take away your compassion, sorry.
yeah, so that doesn't take away your compassion, but it also makes you think, how sad that these people's karma, how bad their karma must really be if they have to now go and invade someone's home, and it's a forceful, it's almost also not a choice for them. It's obviously an act of desperation.
Yeah, sometimes, and sometimes an act of greed. Sometimes desperation, sometimes greed, yeah.
Greed, yeah. But that's all from a past life of karma that's come back with it.
Past life, it's from all lifetimes and from this lifetime too. And that's why we're doing this work of all these demons. That's why Machik did the work. And nowadays we need it more than ever, because we're in that stage of degeneration, and we have to turn it around. And so you have to start with yourself. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about everybody. You have to start with yourself. You have to confront whatever demon it is, and next week we will actually confront those demons and see how to feed them, which is really important.
Yeah. I get anxiety over just making a little decision. It gives me anxiety and depression. It's crazy. Like, if I have to make a decision, whether it's at work or in my life, I can't make a decision, and then that brings on such anxiety and really just distress.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's all different. Everyone's got their own anxieties, and that's just the surface of it, but it really cripples me in my growth.
Yeah, and I think when you can understand that, and everybody's sitting around here, and I'm really grateful that you shared that, but with everybody sitting around here, if you could see how these negative demons that we are fighting are really forces teaching us and showing us to look at the depth of ourselves so that we can free ourselves and so that we can get enlightened, then aren't we lucky? Isn't it lucky in a way when you feel depressed that if you are able to look at it and you're able to see what is this telling me and how long have you been with me? And isn't the fact that you have that momentum in you, all the things that you have to go through happen because of that momentum? So ponder it, everybody. It's really a very important. I felt this great need to do that, to talk about the Chod practice, and then we can come on to the Western way. But if you can get that idea of what it really is all about, then you are able to do it in your own little way. You could do it through Dorji Sempa, Vajrasattva. You can do it through Guru Rinpoche's clearing of obstacles. These are all tools that have been left for us. And Sutra Melione has given us step by step of what to do in the West. But I think when you don't really understand the principles of it, it's quite difficult, Matthew, to actually grasp it. And when I did it a little bit that time at Ikopo, when you were there, people didn't grasp it properly. Very few people could actually really look at their demons. So I think that this background, and to give you a week to think about it, is really helpful, and then we'll go on to it next time. So let me close, and then if you want to ask me anything, I will remain to answer with pleasure. So Eugene, is it possible to just put on that? Okay. So we dedicate for all beings going through a lot of suffering, going through a lot of anxiety. Through the virtue of this goodness, may we obtain omniscience and overcome all adversity, thereupon liberating beings from the ocean of existence, which is rocked by the waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam pamshene jegana chibala tropaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. So we always have to dedicate